Okay. All right. Shall we begin?
Absolutely.
All right. So
First, I just want to tell you that I love you. I'm so happy that we have each other in each other's lives.
Me too. Absolutely. I love you too. There's no one I would rather wake up to and do incredible spiritual work with.
Here, cheers.
Oh. All right. Okay, so Mary, what I'd like you to do is just
Scale here is quite noticeable as an issue that's foremost in my attention. I see. So it feels like the scale of what's to be integrated is so enormous.
Okay.
I can feel that enormity. And it's okay. It's just an adjustment.
Okay.
This is part of the issue, is the adjustment. It's like an ocean overwhelming small little buckets on the beach. I'm feeling the insufficiency of that which is taking in this massive, and even massive is an understatement, this all-encompassing presence. There's a sense of inadequacy. That's the word I'm looking for. Inadequacy in the ability to do it, and this is connected to these old stories that I've been feeling about the truth of what I carry at the core, in terms of old fundamental beliefs about me, about self, in not being enough, or not being smart enough or capable enough or trained enough or big enough or whatever.
Oh. Yeah. Oh.
This is humanity's feeling.
Yeah.
All of humanity has this sense of overwhelmed and inadequate. In the same way that someone who is insecure and uneducated and feels victim, in the same way that someone like that feels entirely intimidated and inadequate in the presence of some great figure like Jesus or whatever, there is that juxtaposition of power and inadequacy that is at the fundamental root of humanity's consciousness. That humanity itself has that feeling in the same way that, a little child like me in my childhood would look up at the rest of the entire world and think, I'm just not as good as the rest of the world or anybody, because of shame or my family or whatever. But humanity has this same mirror of inadequate consciousness, a consciousness of inadequacy. So we make these small little efforts, mostly in a way to comfort our inadequacy, but not in a way to rise to the full potential. And that is, it's at the fundamental root of all of our relationships, like with the world at large. In a good trumps bad paradigm, of course, the good needs to feel better because it feels inadequate. And so in its conquering way is to make that piece feel better. It has no concept of being adequate. And I don't mean being adequate, I mean understanding its power. It doesn't have that capability to understand because it's not in that consciousness. I feel like I need a help.
Yeah.
A being or something.
Yeah, I think so.
I don't have a sense of anything happening. I'm sitting in an area where there are other chairs.
Okay.
And
let's invite.
There's just a waiting happening.
Okay. So given that one of the most important purposes of this session is to connect in with the deepest desire of your higher self, we could try to invite in your higher self. So inviting Mary's higher self to come and join us at one of these chairs.
We have to look at it differently. Okay. So it just popped up that the whole point of the integration is that it's not a separate chair. So we're all here already. So okay, this makes sense. Yeah. So there's essentially no separation between the space that I'm in, me and the asking, and that which I've asked for. It's all in the same being now. Okay. I feel very much in that. It's like being in the center of a globe. That all of the world is in this center of the globe. This is where I am. Oh, this is an interesting feeling. The irony of this spot is that it's all and nothing. So I'm not in the middle, really. I'm just in what is. And so everything else is accessible, all from right here. So it's like saying, whatever the question, I'm going looking for wherever I am. It's a field of, in the primordial ground, there is this exquisite void. pure nothingness. This is a field of nothingness that contains everything that is. It's not the same. It's like the primordial ground that is filled. In the primordial ground, you're aware of nothing. In this, you're aware of everything.
Okay.
But not in a cognitive awareness. It is a fullness more than a cognitive awareness.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a sense of how this is connected with the earlier experience of those enormous limiting beliefs that humanity has?
In this field, you know how, let's say, fifth dimension includes the first, second, third, and fourth dimensions.
Mm-hmm.
But the third dimension doesn't include the fifth.
Yeah.
Okay. So imagine the trillionth dimension contains all of the others, but the third dimension doesn't contain the trillionth. That's the canyon between what the third dimensional sense of inadequacy is and the capabilities of that same consciousness.
Yeah.
That gap is really just a step. It's just a step. So let's focus on the question.
So the original question is, what is the deepest desire of your higher self?
When I say to know all that's in this canyon, I mean to live as all that's in this canyon. This is very difficult to articulate. There's a reason why I can't do this in a way that is something telling, something illuminating it to me.
I understand.
This is the point, is that it needs to be an integrative understanding that all of me has to live this experience of moving into this canyon. Not being told how it is, but experiencing the knowledge, experiencing the movement through that understanding of adequacy. This has to be done differently than it has before. This is not like any of the other experiences. It can't be like any of the other experiences. It's not going to be handed to me. That's the whole point, is that now we are together. And so in this unitive state, the understanding, the journeying, the movement has to be in union. This is where we're at. Everything is now experiential in a much more unitive way. Not one piece over here to embody and experience, and one piece over here to embody and experience, but to experience the canyon together. It is becoming that which we are calling out for. Becoming the answer. This is about becoming that which we're crying out for, which includes the higher self, because it is that calling that has brought itself into now union with this dimension. This whole process, we have to understand this whole process is different. It is the surrender is a different way. The surrender is to something much more unitive. And that we are no longer that which will be given something, but we are that which is given. This is a huge shift in our understanding. But the understanding, too, is part of the, it won't come through the understanding of just the mind and then the body. It's an understanding through this unitive consciousness, because it is becoming the understanding itself.
Mm-hmm.
This is no longer something we're working out. This is something that we're being. This is not just the deepest desire of higher self. It is the being of higher self. It is the experience of higher self.
Mm.
In some ways, this is so much easier and more encompassing, but it is a conceptual framework that doesn't work in a third dimensional understanding, in a way of give and take, give and receive.
Yeah.
It doesn't work like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's no longer, we're past that now.
Yeah.
Mary in particular is past that now. Mary, I have to say this very loud, Mary in particular is beyond this now. This is very important to understand, very important to approach in this way. This conveyance is the key. This conveyance through being is the key. Mary knew from the very beginning she is the message. She's not to tell the message, she is to be the message. This is the being of the message, the being of that which is being called into being.
So this is the new work. It's not work, though, is it? It's just
Exactly.
It's not.
See, this is the challenge. There isn't a conceptual framework to put this in.
Yeah.
We don't have a language to say it's there, it's this.
Yeah.
To work implies that it's something to be done.
Yes.
And something to figure out. And this is not it. This is the difference. This is entirely the difference. You see, in a mindset that says we can achieve if we're adequate enough to achieve,
yes,
then we know that we can overcome it. This is totally not that thing. And so that whole idea of adequacy and inadequacy and overcoming and achieving is the whole problem. That leads us into a place that is not where we are meant to be.
Yeah.
It's not where I don't even want to say going. It's arriving. It's, you see, what the concept doesn't even work, because
no.
It is not a moving towards something. It is a moving within something. Something that is already here. It is like resting in all of the spaces between and within everything else. Within everything. Not else, just everything.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. We are simultaneously an answer to a question that we don't even have time to ask because we're already the answer.
Beautiful.
So the revelatory part of this, we could call it a process. The revelatory process is developing the conveyance of that.
Mm-hmm.
This is Mary's presence.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have models or examples of this. In that regard, this is the modeling. I don't want to say the beginning of that process. This is the entry into that space.
Okay.
It's completely different. It's completely different. All the beliefs just fall down.
Yeah.
They just collapse. This is the collapsing of all of that. This is what's left when the beliefs collapse. It's not the living of a new belief in a framework that our mind can understand. It's not that at all. It is living in that space beyond the conceptual frameworks and being the conveyance of that. This is very, very specific to understand. Being the conveyance of that.
In being the conveyance of that, everything's dropping away.
Yes. You two have spoken about the piercing of the soap bubble.
Mm-hmm.
What was in the soap bubble?
Nothing.
So, exactly. So when we say falling away, what fell away? You see this, the emptiness, right? And so even the conceptual framework of things actually being here falls away. It wasn't really here.
No.
Yeah, but you know, in the storytelling has had to happen in a way that people in the third dimension could understand it. So it had to be these archetypal representations of place and person and story and event and laws and all of these sorts of things. Of course, perfectly fine and wonderful and beautiful and effective, and an exploration that we've all learned a great deal from. And not just us, but all dimensions have. And now that exploration is moving in different way. So all of that still can, you know, there will be people, there will be consciousness that is still explores in that way. Still things to understand. But the humanities evolution is coming now into this space of developing the presence of truly being in its expansive self. Consciousness, the all that is, God, love, divine source, my higher self, which is such a silly thing to say my, because I am this consciousness of all. And so that consciousness in this present realm is here to develop the conveyance of that being.
Okay.
Do we know how that looks? No. But my Mary's presence here, this body, this thing that people can see, is an opening. It's like a portal. This portal travels around, and little by little by little by little, things come in and go in and out through this portal. Conveyance is happening on a completely different level than we realize it here and now, and it will continue in that way as well as other ways. It will continue in the structure of the words, of new words, new ways, new energy with those words, new ways that words are received and put together, and new energies with which those are spoken or written. But what people receive is the understanding under those words, the understanding upon which those words are coming. We don't have a conceptual framework to explain it, but it's coming. This integration has to happen in ways that it can be managed, and for this vessel to manage it, for others around to manage it, for this vessel to find the right resources and community support to manage it in the same way that's happening right here. And that support has to be able to manage what they're learning as well. And so it's an integrating process. All of us together are doing this together. Like it's not just here, it's not just there, it's not just here. It's happening in infinite ways with infinite people as Mary moves through the world.
Mm-hmm.
Not just Mary, obviously, but she has a very pivotal role.
Mm-hmm.
This is greatly freeing to the stomach area.
Oh, wonderful. So Mary's instincts were correct about the opening and the physical pain being a sign of something shifting. Yeah.
See, this is an example of the language being part of a separation language, that there's something that's telling us outside of ourselves this thing, as opposed to we know.
Yeah.
And so now we begin to claim ownership of we've always known. The whole being has always known. And so it isn't this part being told by this part. You see?
Yes.
It's this part in the knowing.
In the knowing.
And so this is a good, well, certainly we can understand things of Mary having a hunch or Mary intuitively feeling or whatever. We can begin to see right away that that in and of itself is a language of separation.
Yeah.
And so we begin to convey things in a different way. And we'll begin, Mary, in speaking now, will begin to be more cognizant of that. And in that subtle way of conveying these things, it will wake people up and allow that integration of this presence of being through those avenues, through those little windows.
Mm.
And there are countless ways. Our whole language framework is around this.
Yeah.
And we just take it for granted. It's the story way that we talk.
Yeah.
We learned it. Of course it is.
Yeah.
And now we will just tweak it. And that tweaking in the most subtle ways will have the most profound effects that people will have no idea about in the moment.
Beautiful.
They cannot be told directly, for the most part. They cannot be told, this is you taking in things in a different way, because we're speaking to a consciousness then that tries to put it in a framework and understanding of the old ways. It can't be conveyed in that way. That's a step-by-step kind of way, the old way of puzzle putting, and that's for the mind. And this is not for the mind.
Yeah.
The mind can't understand this because the mind is trained and structured in a different way. And so as soon as we put it into that structure, we've lost where it really is. Mm-hmm. The information is present within and outside of the soap bubble. Mm-hmm. It is not within the design of the soap bubble.
Mm-hmm. Does she need to know anything else that will help in this conveyance?
There's a deeply centering place Mary has realized. This is the individual portal, meaning you would have it, somebody else would have it, through the individualized vessel. Unseen in this space is all divine presence. Right now, the reason why it is unseen is because Mary is part and parcel of it. And so, in this unitive consciousness, there isn't a reason to need to see it in the old way. It's much more profound than that. Mm-hmm. It's much vaster than that. And so there needs to be the understanding that the assistance with this piece or this piece may occasionally still come around, but what's happening is on a much broader collective level. And so in Mary's experiences of Jesus, of Buddha, of light, of angels, of Archangel Michael, of soul groups, etc., 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 all of that are like looking through particular lenses, looking at the vastness through a particular lens.
Yeah.
The Christ consciousness, the Buddha nature, the angelic light, etc. Where we are now in this unitive state is looking at it without any lens.
Okay.
And it is also not actually looking at it, but being it without the need for lenses.
Okay.
And so the wisdom inherent in the Christ consciousness and the Buddha nature and angelic realms is already inherent in the being of this. And so there's not to despair that there isn't the presence of these luminous beings. It's that we realize the luminosity of ourselves. It doesn't feel the same yet because we're integrating with the third dimensional beings. And so it's a process. It just takes, we have to let this vessel integrate and adjust to its luminosity. And the collective field in which this vessel is existing and reflecting. We speak this as much for the integrative vessel as for you. And so that this can be recorded to help us understand and remember that this is the process that we are in right now, and it looks differently. Yeah. And as much as this engagement with these energies and these consciousnesses is changing because of this, so too are the things that we think are the laws with all of these things, because those laws were there to manage through the third dimensional lens. And so the further we go in our integrating, the more we're able to develop the conveyance of things, we will come to realize that the laws change as well. And when I say change, I mean sort of fall away. That they're simply recognized as not necessary anymore.
So is one of those things that's falling away in this process is that feeling of being disempowered and
yes, which is at the core of the challenge.
Yeah,
it is that piece that in particularly Mary's kind of work is a compassionate embrace of that understanding, a compassionate. This is why Mary's work in particular is so focused on compassionately understanding our pain, because at the core of it is where we are feeling our inadequacy and the pain of separation that bleeds through all of that consciousness.
Yeah.
And so a compassionate understanding and approach to all of that is part of the seeping process of the integration. Okay. That the more we can open up our understanding compassionately of our rejection of pain and the healing through that avenue, the more the opening of this integration can occur. It's a really good avenue to work through with the third dimensional realm. It's a beautiful one because it's effortless in a unitive state to do it.
Yeah.
And people recognize that effortlessness. Yeah. There's a relief in that effortlessness.
Yeah. Is there anything else that is valuable for Mary to know at this time?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for your work. Thank you for your time, for your company.
Wow.
That was very odd for me. Yeah. Very odd.
Okay.
It's a recognizable difference because there's this energy, this like strong.
Yep.
Wow, it was really cool.
It was totally unitive because you became that. It wasn't a being, you were the being.
I could feel it.
Yeah. I could see it. It was beautiful because in that, well, this is the whole point. It's already you. It is actually you. Even though it felt like channeling, actually, it was just you.
You could knock me over with a feather.
I know.
In the very beginning, I had no idea why I was so tender. Like immediately, I was so shocked by that. Coming into that space of feeling that inadequacy, and then whoosh, it just expands out, and I can see the consciousness of humanity's feeling this collective inadequacy was like, whoa! It was so crazy.
Yeah.
You know, it makes me all the more compassionate towards humanity, that humanity is like that small child.
It is.
It's like looking to God to say,
I know, help me. Somebody help me. And if I'm really good, if I change myself, if I do the work, then I will be saved. And that's the narrative that's underlying everything. If only. Oh, it's beautiful, Mary.
It's so beautiful. You know, this is literally the moment that embodies the quintessential cliche of bless their heart.
I know.
You know, like all of humanity, bless your heart.
I know. Every single person. Every single person. Without exception.
My God, our work is huge.
You can say that.
Oh, I'm so fucking grateful for you.
I'm so fucking grateful for you. Jesus.